Just hearing like what those first things that they talk about in the morning. I try to encourage them to think about their dreams. I say, did you have any dreams last night where you close your eyes and you see pictures? I'm just trying to get them to think about dreams in those terms. And so now they tell me like, oh yeah, I had a dream that I was in a car and so-and-so was there. And, wow, cool. Yesterday, there was an amazing rainbow outside. So getting the kids over, look at the rainbow. And they're like, wow, it's beautiful.
What's up, dads? This is the Rise and Dad podcast, a podcast in perspective on life as a dad from dads who are intentional about their fatherhood. I'm your host, Kevin Delro, and today I have a special guest today. He is a photographer, a director, and a co-founder of It's Good, a social-powered food and travel app. Man of so much culture here. He was on 13 seasons of America's Next Top Model as a guest judge and a guest photographer. But more importantly, he's also a father. He's a dad of two. And I'm here to his story because he's got some really uniqueness about parenting, tragedy, celebrity, and a lot of different things. So I really want to give a warm welcome Mike on the pod.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Thanks, Mike. So why don't you tell our viewers just a little bit about yourself?
Let's see. I grew up in LA. Neither of my parents were in the business. My mom was a ceramicist. My dad was a meteorologist. Grew up very, middle class, but especially at the time, and this is the 80s and 90s, the public schools were pretty mixed. So I went to school with some kids who bought their lunch with food stamps, and then other kids whose parents were executives at, some of the studios. So I was exposed to arts and entertainment, reasonably young. And it's something that just stuck with me. Like I really always responded to, I love to draw, I love to paint, loved movies from a young age. And so, kind of made my way through in the 90s. Also, the computer thing was like new, computers. And so I kind of hit like right around the end of my high school years was when visual effects became a thing. So originally I trained to be a visual effects artist, went to school for a year doing that up in the Bay Area, then eventually quit and transitioned more into physical production, trained to be a cinematographer. Was an apprentice to the cinematographer of Titanic, got the Academy Award for that, and then slowly kind of made my way through film into photography and still photography, and then that eventually led back into directing, and it's been kind of a winding journey, which has now led me to co-found It's Good, which really kind of fuses together a lot of my loves of travel. Yeah. Which is one of the things that helped me figure out who I'm supposed to be, and helped me figure out who I am as a person, and culture, experience, adventure, and yeah, it's a little of my background.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I've always known you in our professional setting as a photographer, and I've seen some of your work. It's just amazing. Are there like pieces of work for your photography or people that you have shot that were like more special experiences to you, or ones that might have had to pinch yourself at the time?
I mean, there's for a number of different reasons. I think there are some jobs that I did where it was an opportunity to travel, and it was either the job itself was in a place that I really wanted to go to, or it was next to a place that was on a bucket list. So I did a series of shoots in like Prague, which I'd been to already when I was younger and backpacking, but it was really cool to go back in this other context, and then I used that as a jumping off point to go explore other parts of Czech Republic and Bavaria and the forest and all of that. And then I was a judge on a beauty pageant in Vietnam, and that was an interesting way to see Vietnam, and then also a way for me to get to Cambodia, which was on my bucket list for a long time. So those are definitely highlights. And then in other cases, I got to work with Robert De Niro, John Travolta, Oprah, people who are legends that, I've looked up to for, a multitude of reasons, both for their artistry and contributions to cinema, but also who they are as people and what they stand for. So that's been exciting. And then there's, like the young stars that are coming up and are shaping culture, in a whole new way. And so people like Kendall or Justin Bieber, Haley, people like that, I think are also great people and really creative and doing cool things.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like how, you started with the photography as a mode to get to where you want to go in terms of travel. Mm-hmm. I think that is really neat how it is your passion, but it's like taking you places, literally places of where you've always wanted to be. That's really cool.
And I think, growing up in LA where, we're a pretty young city as far as cities go, and we don't have, a tremendous amount of like ancient history. So I found it to be really profound when I went to, London for the first time or Paris for the first time. And that was also when I really connected with history, where I didn't enjoy it as much in school, but when I could walk the streets that Napoleon had commissioned, when I could walk the areas of London that were bombed in World War II, everything became more real and easier for me to really absorb. And again, just like throwing myself into a culture that was so foreign, and in many cases, places where people didn't speak English, I found it to be meditative, in some ways. And then also that adventure, I think, brought out the parts of me that, I was always trying to find, vehicles in which to bring them out.
That's awesome. And before we get into your kids, why don't you just tell us really quickly about It's Good?
Yeah. So, again, going back to like when I first started traveling, this was like, let's say 96, 97. The internet as we know it today did not exist. I was traveling with the cool book for the young traveler, which was Lonely Planet. So that was brand new back then.
You're aging yourself.
Yes, yeah. I mean, the gray hair is aging me, but yeah, Lonely Planet too. And the books would say, oh, here's the coolest cafe in the old square of Prague. And then I would meet a local and I'd say like, oh, I'm going to go to this spot. I read about this in the book. And a lot of times they'd be like, fuck that place. That was cool 2 years ago. I'm going to take you to the real spot. And those were these places where you show up and you're like, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is where the energy is, where the magic, where like the artists and the people shaping, their culture. How do I find more of those places? And then how do I keep a record of the ones that I found, both to be able to like go back and revisit myself in the future, but also to be able to share with friends and family. Yelp, I don't think existed at that point either. And so I would collect these matchbooks. I would collect, business cards or pens or whatever I could take. And then I would compile it into a list when I got home. And then as my friends started to travel, they would ask me, send me your London list, send me your Paris list. And so it became this whole, I was proud. I was proud to share these places that I loved. And I hoped that my friends would have the same kind of experiences that I did. And then, over the years, I was constantly seeking out and collecting these special spots. And I kept thinking like, there's got to be a better way to save and share these. But, I kept dreaming of something that was really dedicated to this purpose, and something that, learning from a place like Yelp where everything goes negative so quickly, how can we make something that's positive only, where it's either good or it's nothing at all. It's either, you would say, this place, you got to try it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's really good. Yeah.
Awesome. That's great. We will move on to what we're really here about. And this is usually where I get to talk to dads, and then I see a little bit of the sparkle in their eye when they get to talk about their little ones. So, Mike, tell us about your kids.
2 kids. Let's see, the whole family have birthdays in March. So we just had a wave. Thought it was a great idea at the time. We're like, like everybody's same birthday. Oh, man, it's a lot of work. A lot of fun though, but yeah, we just had our son River just turned 4. Our daughter Sloane just turned 3. They're both at this place where their personalities and their language skills are just exploding, which is like really exciting and also very challenging at the same time, because they are having super strong feelings, and that can be fear, anger, desire, and they're still figuring out how to properly channel that, and how to express what they're thinking and feeling. So for us, it's a bit of interpretation. It's a lot of patience.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Are they different in terms of personalities? How do you gauge how you interact with River versus Sloane? Is there much differences that you can tell?
Yes and no. It's interesting because I think, and we're also trying to figure out like how much of this is just due to being a second child versus a first child. So I was a first child. I have a younger sister, and it's just like purely logistically, like the experience of having River was so different from Sloane because with your first child, you only have one, right? So all of your attention can go into that one. B, he was born during COVID. We were at home, as a requirement. It was like we had nothing else to do except, it was baking tons of bread, making pasta, gardening, taking naps, just like really living a leisurely life and spending tons of time with him. Lots of like skin to skin naps, all of that. And then when Sloane was born, it was just after the, I would say loosening of the COVID restrictions, and where things really started, it was after the vaccine. So we started seeing like real, more remarkable recovery, which also meant people going back to work and, expectations of kind of, and, being able to live kind of a quote normal life again. And then additionally, we still had a 1-year-old who of course needed a lot of attention. So with her, it was a harder, kind of game of juggling of like, okay, how do we give her the same amount or almost the same amount of like one-on-one attention as he got? And how do we continue to give both of them dedicated attention while we go back to work and back to normal life? The results so far, we've seen when she needs to be loud, she can get loud. Yeah. And so when she needs attention, she'll say, hey, like, give me attention. Yeah. And I would say he's maybe a little more, he's never had a bad day in his life, which is great, but he thinks everything is awesome. Yeah. And she, I think, has to kind of like pull at the strings a little bit more. Also, being so close in age, it's a blessing, but it's also, she's constantly wanting to perform at his level and wants to have the same things that he has. Yeah. And it doesn't understand a 3-year-old mind, oh, you're a year younger, you're not going to be as big as him. You're not going to be able to communicate as well as he can, just because his brain obviously has, a third more of your life's worth of development. So she definitely is not afraid of telling us no on what she wants and what she doesn't want. But they're also still very similar. They're both like really silly and goofy and love to laugh. And there's two things that you said that really stood out to me. And you mentioned being the only child and really getting all that attention. I have only one daughter, and I've thought about it. It's a blessing and a curse, where the blessing is that she gets to spend all of her time with mom and dad all the time. Yeah. But at the same time, she doesn't really get to have, that sibling. Of course, we have friends and we see people, but that sibling where you have those interactions that I'm sure you see River and Sloane talking to each other or interacting, and it's like the cutest thing ever, or you just want to be a fly on the wall in those interactions, where we don't have those, unless, we're over at your house or we're somewhere else with our friends. We don't really see those. We constantly think about that. And the other thing that you mentioned was, I have a little girl and Sloane is a girl. I really like when girls are more empowered to reach out and say, I need this, I want this. And so when you were saying that is very much how my daughter is. But I like really champion it. And I say, if you need something or if you're not feeling right, you should always say something. Say something, speak your mind, and tell us all the time. If we say, no, you can't have it, tell us why you think you need it. And so I just love that, because I know Sloane, and when I hear that, I'm just like, hell yeah, ask for what you need. Yeah, I think, I mean, like there's no right or wrong way. I mean, my co-founder, and it's good, John, he's got 4 kids, and I can't imagine having 4 kids, and just by design, your attention is going to be divided. And then I have plenty of friends, they were an only child, and some of them, I think for them, part of it was great, and part of it is like, oh man, I wonder what it was like to have a sibling. As somebody who has a sibling, it's like, what is it like to be an only child? There's no right or wrong. I think you just have different, it's just a different path, and different maybe things that are learned inherently at home, like sharing or having that person who's built into your life where you have this shared experience of mom and dad. My friends who grew up without siblings have just had to build that with their friends and eventually with their partner.
Yeah. The idea of more kids to me is so great. And when I think about more kids, and we're probably done having kids, but I just think, man, it's just more love in the house.
Uh-huh.
It's just more love to go around. And my wife has made the comment before where she's like, oh man, there's like so much more love that's needed when you have another kid.
Mm-hmm.
And it like in my head, I'm just like, I got so much to give, like bring it on, I think there's like definitely a balance of being able to give them the right amount of love and making sure they feel that way.
Sure.
So my next question, I always ask all of our guests, tell us about the first time that you found out you guys were going to have a kid. And for you, it might be a little bit different because it was a little more planned. So
Yep.
Could you tell the viewers who might not have context?
Yeah. So both of our kids were born via surrogate. And it was something that was a combination of some medical things that we were dealing with and age. And we were definitely on the later end of pretty much all of our friends in terms of having kids, which was really, that part was a decision on our side to just, we just didn't feel ready. And so we froze embryos reasonably early on, knowing that we would just wait until we were ready. And then when the time came, then we knew we would have the option, depending on how things looked, and kind of consulting with our doctors, what would be the right decision, to either try to carry naturally or go surrogate. And we ultimately used surrogates, and it was a great experience. I think there's a lot of pitfalls, I think, that you can kind of find yourself in if you're not connected to the right people, as is the case with most things in life. And we got really lucky that a number of our friends, either through themselves going through a medical issue or if they're a gay couple, right? Like one reason or another, they also went through surrogates before us. And so we were able to learn from them and, okay, here's the right lawyer to talk to, for all the contracts. Here's a lady who had also gone through surrogacy herself many years before, had a really difficult experience, finding and managing that process, and has now set up a company to help consult and help people kind of guide you through. And so we were connected to just a series of wonderful people, and the doctor himself, who harvested the eggs, did the embryos, did all the genetic testing and all that stuff, because it is more complicated. You're putting your genetic material into somebody else. You have to do a whole bunch of testing before you can actually do the transfer. On the legal side, you have to consider things like, what if during the pregnancy it's discovered that there's a medical or genetic or other malady that would impact the baby and could either cause an unhealthy delivery or something that would impact the child's ability to live a happy and healthy life. What do you want to do? And then it's up to us to decide. And then we also have to be in alignment with the surrogate because she's the one carrying it. And so you have to have all of this mapped out ahead of time, to the most extreme example of, what if she's pregnant, you guys tragically die in a plane crash? What happens? Who's going to take care of the baby? Who's going to make the medical decisions to take care of the baby prior to the baby even being born? And then what happens afterwards? I mean, it's all of these things that
holy shit,
you never have to think about. Yeah, crazy.
What a process, man. And I'm asking you this question just because I don't know.
Yeah.
Tell me about when you choose, there is another human that is going to do this for you.
Yeah.
That's got to be such a nerve-wracking, or at least experience where you're like, this is the person. Obviously, there's a lot that goes into it, but what was that like?
It's, again, the first time especially, everything was Zoom just because nobody was meeting in person. You go through different applications or different like profiles basically. And the woman that we were working with, who was that kind of consultant, I hate to say concierge because it sounds so like bougie, but she basically just helps you from falling into like a weird bad situation. And there's lots of bad situations, unfortunately. You have so many different considerations around courts and filing all the legal documents ahead of time and on time, because this is, again, somebody else delivering your baby. And while this is genetically your baby, she's actually giving birth. And depending on what state she's giving birth in, that impacts whose name is on the birth certificate. And so filing things ahead of time with the court to make sure your name as the genetic parents is on the birth certificate and not the surrogate's name. It's all of this stuff that has to happen. And so, it's a mutual interview process that happens. You both have to...
Yeah. If she can fill the needs that you guys have and vice versa. So it's like both. Yeah.
And just personality wise, make sure that your expectations, like how often do you want to communicate?
How close did you guys want to be?
It was interesting. Like we wanted to be close, and we were so grateful for both of these ladies, helping us to have a family. Like it's such an incredible blessing. And that's why most of them go into that, anyways, that they're literally helping families who may not otherwise be able to have kids, helping them have kids. We knew we would be eternally grateful. So we figured, okay, let's find people that we really like. And let's just start off with friendly, but not too close, right? Like friendly, and just let the friendship develop organically, as opposed to like trying to be joined to the hip, all the time. And then it turns into like us micromanaging her, where it's her body. We want her to feel like she has some agency, over herself as well. So trying to like keep a healthy balance. And then over time, we just grew closer and closer, and we still text some pictures of the kids. And
oh, great. That's what my next question was, like, how close are you now? But it sounds like you guys are still on talking terms and texting.
Definitely.
So, Mike, you have a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little about your approach to fatherhood.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I'll start by saying before we embarked on having kids, before we really jumped into it, we all have different backgrounds, and our backgrounds are shaped almost entirely from our parents. Their backgrounds are shaped by their parents and their culture and upbringing. And Jen was adopted, was raised Mormon. She's talked about this quite a bit. Grew up between Utah and Hawaii, didn't really have trauma within her family. Her family's amazing. Her parents are wonderful. Her dad passed a couple years ago, sadly, but was a really amazing guy. Her mom is wonderful. She has 2 sisters.
I've met her mom.
Oh yeah.
Nice woman.
So, but it's a very traditional belief system, right? Very patriarchal. So she had certain things that she clashed with and really wanted to kind of explore more prior to having kids. And on my side, my mom is bipolar and was self-medicating, was an alcoholic, was abused and abusive. I had there was a lot of trauma for me to work through. And I think for both of us, the goal, speaking for me personally, my goal was to be able to show up as a father without any of that prior trauma, or as little of that trauma informing how I parent now. And they talk about generational trauma, and it's become, some would say it's like a buzzword. It's real, like my grandparents went through the Holocaust, Great Depression. When my grandmother died, we were finding, wadded up $20 bills like tucked under her bed, wrapped in, stockings, wrapped in another stocking, and a sock stuffed under. And they were so old, they'd been sitting there for so many years. They were actually silver notes. They were still old dollar silver notes. And that's like real fear, real fear. And it's like that kind of core defining fear. And there's no way that couldn't impact my dad. And, my dad grew up in this very fearful environment and in a family where they didn't really express love towards each other. And he told me not too long ago that he never remembers his dad actually telling him that he loves him. And all of that leaves this indelible impression on who you are as a person. And so I think my dad has done an incredible job flipping that side of things. He's been extremely emotional and warm and loving my whole life, and has really helped me, embrace and develop my sensitive side. I'm a very sensitive person. And so it was very helpful for me to have a dad who encouraged that and didn't say, boys don't cry, that's wrong, But on the other hand, he does still live in a place of fear. And, and it's something that he and I talk about quite a bit, where I think he wants to really lead with optimism, but his, limbic brain says, be careful. There's always danger around the corner.
Yeah.
And so that's something that I've personally really struggled with for a lot of my life, because I learned that from him. And so prior to us having kids, we were told about something called the Hoffman process. So actually Jen heard about it originally through Katy Perry. And, because Katy grew up in a really religious family. Yeah. And so she told Jen, I just did this thing, I think you'll get a lot out of it. And we were both looking for something to help us figure out parenthood. And so we went. She went, and I went 3 weeks afterwards. And it was an incredible
It was like a 3-day workshop or something?
No, it's a 6-day retreat.
Okay.
No
Is
phone.
it you and other dads, or?
It's a mix of all different kinds of people.
Yeah.
They
already have kids, don't have kids.
Old people, young people, famous people, librarians. Just this incredible mix of people from all around the world. And they have retreat locations all around the world. It's been going since the 50s. It's rooted in science and therapy and psychology, and all of the instructors are really talented and amazing. And it is an opportunity to just look the devil in the face for a week. Mm-hmm. All of those things that are your shame, your fears, the things that you're insecure about but afraid to talk about, the things that may be kind of pulling the strings from the shadows, mm-hmm. and may cause you to react in a certain way that maybe you're not proud of later, or may cause you to be defensive, or may cause you to not do something that would better impact your life. It's really just to look at those things, and what are those things that we learned, what are all the rocks in your backpack, and what do you want to hold on to, and what do you want to change. And so that was a definitely a defining experience for both of us, and coming from very opposite backgrounds in terms of the traumas and things. But that has led me to really lean into the sensitive side, the creative side, the letting the kids lead us into the things that they love, and then reinforcing the things that, that obviously we want to keep them safe and put up, be that sort of electric fence for them, but let them play within the safe space. And if you want to paint your nails, you want to, go ride bikes, you want to play the piano, and let them kind of tell us what are the things that they love, and then lean into those things. Yeah.
That's awesome. What does that look like every day? So let's say Jen's out of town, mm-hmm. Mike's in charge. What does that look like today? What does that look like when you wake up and that approach?
Yeah. So we both work, which means we need to have childcare. The kids are young enough to where they don't have to go to school. And we've chosen to, especially given our living situation right now, which I know we can talk about in a bit, but given that we have been moving around we've chosen not to rush River into a new school in a new city. And we have incredible nannies, truly amazing. It took us a while to find the right people who could have the flexibility to kind of move with us, but also treat our kids like they're their own kids, and not just keep them safe, but really enrich them. So what we try to do when we can in the mornings when we're not working, I love cooking breakfast. I love, making some, scrambled eggs, fried eggs. We'll do some toast. I haven't been baking as much lately, but I'm looking forward to getting back into baking. So we do like fresh, sourdough and kind of grill it, maybe some avocado toast, stuff like that. Yeah. And just kind of hearing like what those first things that they talk about in the morning, whether it's, I try to encourage, them to think about their dreams, and so from an early age, I would say, did you have any dreams last night where you close your eyes and you see pictures, and just trying to get them to think about dreams in those terms. And so now they tell me like, oh yeah, I had a dream that I was in a car and so-and-so was there. I'm like, wow, cool. Yesterday there was an amazing rainbow outside. So getting the kids over, like, look at the rainbow. And they're like, wow, it's beautiful. And, so just having those times where we get to really hang with them. And then it's, okay, daddy's going to go take care of his body. I went and did yoga this morning. Mommy's going to go take care of her body. She went to the gym. And our nanny took them to, there's a class that Jen's sister told us about called Kids Strong, which is like part jungle gym, part, like listening, paying attention, part confidence building. So she took them to Kids Strong, and they like got an award, and got like a new jersey, and then they went to the park and they were riding scooters. So it's kind of, throughout the day, if it's a weekday, it's, usually mornings we'll hang with them, get to spend some good time together. They go off on an adventure. They come back. Sloane's still taking naps. River's kind of like quiet place. They'll come home. We usually hang with them for a little bit before they go have their quiet time. And then afternoon, we'll go do something fun, which could be take them back to a park, take them to a restaurant for dinner, maybe go ice skating, maybe go see a movie, something like that.
Yeah, I like the sense of the ritual. So like you say, how you cook breakfast, like those are so important, where I think about it all the time, where when Sloane and River are older, they're going to say like, we always woke up and dad was always making breakfast, and I think about that with my own daughter. Everything that I do that is like, we go to coffee shops a ton. We get a coffee shop, we go to a coffee shop, and she always gets a croissant and I get my espresso. It's like what we do. And to me, I always think about how like 20 years from now, she could be like, maybe if I'm not there, or in 50 years, said, man, this reminds me of when I was with dad. We'd always go to the coffee shop and we'd have a croissant, and maybe now I do that with my son or my daughter. Yeah. Like, so I always think about that. And here at the Rise and Dad podcast, we always talk about being intentional. Mm-hmm. And I do these things where we always go to a coffee shop. We always get the croissant and the espresso, because I'm intentional about setting that like ritual where anytime she has a croissant, I hope to God she remembers dad. She will. Right? Or if somebody orders an espresso, she's like, dad, that was dad's drink. And so even I think that's smell, really cool.
Like those kind of like the sensory memories, I think can be even more powerful and more surprising, I think, than the structured action. I'm sure she'll walk into like a bakery or a coffee shop and be like, oh, it reminds me of my dad. It makes me think of my dad. Let me call him real quick.
My God.
I'm in Paris. I'm getting a croissant. It made me think of you,
That would literally like make my day. If that ever happened, like I'm an old man somewhere, she's like, I'm having a croissant and an espresso. I'll like be so happy, like all that effort. Yeah. All right, Mike. One thing that I did want to touch about is your wife, Jen. She's a great lady. She is a beauty and hair mogul. Mm-hmm. And so to some degree, your kids are in the media or known kids of celebrities. And I'd love to hear like what that's like.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's something we talk about quite a bit, and something we're really cognizant of and always like a little worried about. We want them to be able to have normal childhoods, as much as one could have these days. And I think, things like social media come up all the time of just how devastating it can be for like young kids and teenagers. And that, when I grew up, again, like in LA, like we weren't wealthy, but we weren't poor. I had friends whose families were wealthy, I had friends whose families were dirt poor, and I think social media has just really kind of stretched things into opposite directions, and has also encouraged a behavior of just showing off, and has also led people to believe they need to be living this extreme life in order to have fun. Like that's the end goal is this extreme life, which is not the case. I think one of the benefits of both my work and Jen's work is we've been able to work with and become friends in some cases with some extremely talented but also wonderful people. And we're trying to navigate those waters a bit where the kids don't quite register what celebrity is yet, but I know it's coming. And I've seen it even with our celebrity friends with their kids, that they hit a certain age and they...
What happens?
When they're... Well, like when you're young, you just notice, everybody's nice to mom or dad or both, right? But then they get a little bit older and it's like, daddy's on TV or mommy's on TV. Or why are all these strangers standing in front of us taking pictures? Yeah. And I've seen it sadly go a lot of different directions where it has like a very quick and negative impact on the kids, and they kind of shut down. And I remember one friend's daughter who would yell at the photographers, no pictures. And it was so sad, this little girl. And she was only mimicking...
You don't want to be thinking that. Yeah.
No, she was only mimicking what she heard. But for her to grow up like that, like it's hard, you know?
So how are you intentional about blocking this or preparing them?
Again, it's early and they don't quite know things yet. But they've got an uncle who's makes music and is, and he's seen him on stage, and then they've got, an auntie who was in movies, and then they've seen, it's a picture on a billboard. And so they're like starting to register some of these things. I think my goal is to tell them, like, look, it's not real. Like, this kind of stuff isn't real. Like, yes, they're very talented and that's something to be proud of, but the rest of it is just, it's all a part of a show. It's all part of a kind of a game. And that's not the thing that's necessarily going to make you happy. The things that make our friends happiest are when they're with their kids, when they're on a trip or at home, or those are the things that they really enjoy. Yeah, they enjoy doing their work, but I think they've all found a greater joy in community and family. And so just trying to emphasize that, we've also struggled even just with where can you raise a kid where they still have the opportunity to live like just a simple life where they go out and play in the dirt and go ride a bike. So ultimately it comes down to us, really, and us, kind of constantly trying to re-emphasize the important things are: be a good person, find something that you love, follow your passions, follow your talents, follow...
Those are huge. Those are like what defines them as a person, right? It's like, if you're a good person, or you get like the billboards or movies or whatever it is, that's just, as you put it, it's just the show. Yeah. But it doesn't define who you are as a person.
And I think travel too. I mean, that was really important for me. And I think I'm really looking forward to taking the kids out of the country completely and into a different, like, they're growing up bilingual. They're learning French as well as English. So we're taking them to Paris this summer for the first time. They're still very young, but this is the first opportunity for them to, like, you're in a whole city where everybody speaks French. They have some of the best croissants in, anywhere in the world, right? Yeah. This is where it was invented. You guys, like, they both love pastry. So, like, taking them to a place where maybe the priorities and value system is different, and whether or not that's where we want to live or where they want to live, at least they see that it's not just the things that are immediately around us all the time, that the world is a big place. There's a lot of different things to consider. And just because something's important here doesn't mean it's important somewhere else.
Yeah. I really like that. And I'm looking forward to doing that with my daughter. We're going to Paris at the same time you guys are. Hopefully we'll get to meet up. Yeah. But we taken her to these places, and of course Paris and Rome and where we're going is gorgeous. And I'm hoping that we're able to show them more than just, you know, the nice, beautiful places. Like my mom and my parents are from the Philippines. And when we go back, we have a 2-week trip where the first week is like staying in all the nice places that are just amazing and these white sands and beaches. But the second part is actually staying with my mom's family or staying with my dad's family who don't live as nice as we do. And we put on a luncheon where we help families in need and we feed a community. We do things like that where you're in touch with like how things aren't nice everywhere, right? I hope we go to some other places and we can kind of give back, learn about the community there, and, you know, just see all different walks of life.
Yeah. Even extending into like a home life, you know, the house that our kids are growing up in is, you know, roughly twice the size of the house that I grew up in. And my house never felt small to me as a kid. Now looking back on it, it's like a quaint, you know, kind of small Spanish style home. But how do we, you know, I really appreciate the house that we're in now because it's so much bigger than what I grew up in. And we have a view, which I didn't have a view as a kid. But this is what's going to be normal. This is our kids' baseline. So how do we keep them from only looking upwards and thinking of like, well, but that house is bigger, we need that? And how do we remind them that no, a lot of people have less and are really happy, and you don't need to have all of these things to be happy. They have so many more toys than I ever had, you know, but that's their baseline. That's what they expect. So especially now that they're getting to a place where we can have these real conversations with them, our plan is to be more proactive about, okay, you got some new toys. Now we're going to pick a whole bunch of toys and we're going to take them and donate them for families who can't buy them themselves, or for kids who maybe lost all their toys for any number of reasons. And trying to get them into that, like, you know, very intentional place of like, oh, we're very fortunate. I can still enjoy all this stuff. I don't have to feel guilty about it, but we appreciate what we have, and we recognize that not everybody has this, and it's important for us to give back and support other people. Yeah,
it's always such a balance because like I love getting my daughter stuff, and literally just shit, like stuff, and I love to see her happy, but it's like it's got to be the balance, right? Like we always hope that our kids grow up better than us and having more than us. Like we also want them to struggle, you know, struggle some, or at least to the level that we did, because, you know, my daughter is going to live much better than I ever did, and yours the same, and it's just a balance. One thing that I wanted to touch on was earlier, you and your family lost your home in the LA fires, which kind of, you know, made your eventual move to Seattle. And I wanted to talk to you about that because it's obviously a moment of like a lot of grief for adults. Your kids may not have been old enough to really have that grief, but can you tell me a little bit about kind of that whole experience of being strong for your family?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, like we're still going through it, you know, and I think it's something that we'll be going through for a long time, honestly. It's so many waves of different kinds of grief, and I just went back actually 2 or 3 weeks ago to a refresher. They have like a condensed version of Hoffman, and so I just went back 3 weeks ago because I just knew that I needed it, you know, and I've been holding since January 7th, have been holding so much tension in my body, in my soul, you know, and have not really had any kind of opportunity to just try to heal myself a little bit. We lost our home. River School burnt down. My dad's house burnt down. My dad's 86. There was, you know, a lot of stress, trying to make sure he was stable, you know, and trying to get him resituated in a way where it was tolerable. And then on top of that, we finally moved to a place where we were closer to him than we've ever been, really, and definitely ever been since we had kids. And then we found a school right in between our house and his house for River. So it was our house, River School, his house. We could take River to school,
Perfect
then go
setup.
see grandpa and grandma. We could, and this is my, his wife, my stepmom. We could easily meet up with him for lunch, or I could, if I was coming back from the city to our house, could just, what are you doing, Dad? Do you want to go get coffee? Do you want to get a croissant? Do you want to, those kinds of things. Do you want to just go, I'll just come and say hi to you, give you a hug, And so we had mapped out this 10 to 15 year plan, basically, where, we'd spent so many years moving. And every time we would move, we started in a condo and then to a townhouse, then to a small house, then to a little bigger house and a little bigger house, and kept moving up to where we finally landed on this house. It was like our forever home, or as forever as it could be. We're moving every 2 to 3 years generally. And this was finally the house where, we're going to stay here for a while. This is where you make memories. This is where the kids are going to grow up. They're going to go to the beach. They're going to, they'll learn to surf. They have a French school, 15 minutes away. They'll continue their French education. They're near grandpa's house. And just in one day, all of it gone, all of it. And it just so many layers of loss, down to the simplest things of like that achievement that we felt getting that house that was still like really expensive, but we were able to get it. And it had this spectacular view of the ocean with a hillside just covered in honeysuckle. And every day, at the end of the day, the sunsets were unbelievable. Like my camera roll on my phone was just every day sunset photos. And it was a reason to stop working and a reason to just get up from the desk, close the computer, go hang out with the kids, maybe pour a glass of Lambrusco and go sit and watch the sunset and listen to the hummingbirds chirping around, in the honeysuckle. It was those simple moments that move brought to us that I loved the most. And to lose all of that is some of the stuff that really is like gutting,
Yeah.
And then additionally our community, where we'd been coming up to Seattle for a number of years, and we really started coming up here as a way to get the kids out into nature, take a break from all the Hollywood, LA stuff, and go to a place that was accessible and close enough to where we could go back and forth if we needed to, but just felt like a different world where the hardest decision of the day is like, which lake do you want to go on? Where are we going to go paddleboarding today? So it was meant to be that escape. And then, with the loss of the home, it's like, oh shit, first it was, okay, we're in a hotel. We didn't even know how the fire impacted our neighborhood. We had to get make sure our dogs were safe. And just kind of like grab, what are the essentials, passports, all of this stuff. We still lost so many heirlooms from grandparents, so many, like my whole book collection. I had decades of collecting amazing art books, books from my mentors and, people who'd inscribed stuff to me, like really, truly special things like from my dad, from my grandma. But that loss of community, the loss of community for River, even like having his school and his classmates, losing that, they were, so far, it seems like they're spared from the trauma of all of it. Like they don't seem to have
young enough.
They don't seem to have a fear around it. Like they were, luckily when it kicked off, immediately our nanny's like, I'm going to go grab them just in case. And at that point had not turned into anything close to what it would become. But she's like, let me go pick them up just in case. And when she got there, it had already spread really quickly. They were shutting down PCH, and they got stuck in like 3 hours of that crazy evacuation traffic. There was just a complete vacuum of like leadership in terms of like, okay, all these people have to get out, so we got to figure out a way to get them out. And so they kind of it was like two arms acting without any kind of brain connecting, but so everybody's being evacuated down this way. Just kidding, this is closed. Then you had people here telling everybody in the cars, abandon your cars, just get the fuck out and walk. And so, our kids and our nanny, they were in the car. Thankfully, she gave them an iPad each with headphones. So they're just like in zombie mode, Our nanny was watching the people walk down the street with like a kid under one arm, a dog under the other, dragging a suitcase. Like you're literally just in pure survival mode. And River now has been talking about, so they saw, there was fire all around him. He talks about fire tornadoes because you saw when the wind was whipping up, like literally turning into a tornado. Plants, trees on fire, palm trees on fire, dogs just running wild because people just let them out of their yard, like just get out, be safe. People crying, just craziness. So he talks about it. He knows. We tell him that Malibu's broken, that the house is broken, that his school is broken. When we went and visited the property last week, we brought back some these little painted tiles that were in the kids' bathroom in their shower, just to show them, like, here's some of the tiles we brought back. They're all crushed, and so he knows it's broken, and he keeps saying, like, we should fix Malibu. I'm like, yeah, we should. We'll fix it. It's gonna be okay. We're safe. Seattle's home for now. And then, for us, even personally, we have to keep just telling ourselves, like, all right, this is home for now. Maybe this will turn into home, for years longer. Maybe we'll decide we want to go back to Southern California. Maybe we'll decide we want to go somewhere else while we try to work through the whole process of, like, clear the debris. It's just overwhelming. Thousands of these, homes that, are just smoldering, rubble. So.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Mike. Do you think that because our kids, especially our younger kids, for lack of a better word, are oblivious to kind of things around them, like, has that given you a little bit of comfort knowing that your 3 and 4-year-old are probably thinking, well, what's dad making for breakfast? Right? And so to some degree they are guarded from it,
It definitely is, like, they have a bit of that, like, kind of goldfish brain. Same with our dogs. They're just like, I get to eat breakfast. This is exciting. This is really great. There's something really nice and refreshing just about that simplicity of finding joy in simple things like rainbows, or going outside and River will find a really cool leaf. And it's a great opportunity to remind myself, like, wow, that is cool. Like, nature's beautiful. It's very rewarding to be able to sort of, like, relive and rediscover that innocence and that simple joy. And at the same time, it's interesting because I see now how people end up being racist, angry, all of these things where you're like, how could they believe that? And it's like, well, if that's what they're taught, that's all they know. And so I'm trying to, how do we, instead of these things, like, just keep focusing on the joys and the beauty and all of that. And it does pay back in dividends. And even just looking down and seeing them look up at me, that kind of, like, look of wonder, unless I'm telling them they can't have, like, more cake, or they have to, like, go potty and then go to bed, then it's a scowl. But just that look of wonder on their face, is
I think we can learn a lot from them at times, where a lot of times they just live in the moment. And there's that innocence where there's some shit happening in the world, but, like, in this moment, what I am drawing, what I am building, what I'm looking at is beautiful. And I love that. And me and my wife, we try to protect her from everything. And when she has these moments of just innocence and look how great it is, like, I think about, like, man, it is my job to protect this. And by this, it's just this, like, notion of a beautiful life and simple things that are beautiful in its own right.
And curiosity, where, like, I think naturally our brains just filter down all of this other stuff and focus on the task at hand, whereas the kids are just so open, and come into a room and just sort of, like,
everything's
look around
new.
it, like, what does that do? What does that do? And they're just, like, want to know about it. Like, why is that thing there? So trying to, like, bring a little more of that into, my life. It's fun, you know?
All right, Mike, we're going to go into this last part. It's just some quick questions. The best and worst part about fatherhood.
Oh, man. I think that the best part is seeing them as these brand new people and getting to help shape them into good future people. Is one of the greatest parts. Worst parts, less sleep, I guess,
Yeah. What's the biggest challenge about being a dad?
Biggest challenge so far has really just been finding balance, wanting to be very present for them, but knowing, especially now, I really need to carve out time for self-care and work, and then even just relationship with Jen, keep that, hold that as sacred and make sure we're giving time to that, giving time to myself, giving time to the kids, giving time to work. So, it's just time.
Yeah. And one piece of advice for a new dad or a current dad?
Yeah. Oh, man. One piece. Honestly, I would say work on yourself. Work on yourself. Don't be afraid of therapy. Don't be afraid of self-help. The better you can make yourself, the more you can show up for your kids. The more open you can make yourself, and the more that you can address those fears or shames or whatever that is, the better you'll be for your kids, for yourself. The more you'll get to enjoy the time with them, the more you'll get to create those special memories. So I would say, especially for guys, because we're really not encouraged to talk about things like therapy or feelings or rainbows or any of that, but put the time in. It's worth it. Those are the things that the kids will remember you for as well.
That's really good, Mike. And our last part is the rise in dad's choice. It's just a quick this or that. So would you rather do bath time or school pickup?
Ooh. Right now I'd say maybe school pickup.
Morning routine or nighttime routine?
Morning routine.
The cooking. It's the cooking.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Also trying to get him take a bath in the pajamas and it's time to go to bed. They're like, no, but I gotta do this thing, and I forgot this thing downstairs. Wait, I need more ice in my water bottle. It's always like, no, I gotta go to the bathroom again.
That's the same with my daughter. It's like the water's not cold enough. It's like there's ice. Man.
Yeah.
Long car ride or long plane ride?
Long car ride.
Why?
I find driving really relaxing.
Deal with a poopy blowout or a meltdown?
I'll take poopy blowout.
Eating out or cooking in?
That's a hard one. Yeah. I'll say maybe cooking in, just because we don't do it as often. So yeah, but I like it.
Last one-on-one time or the whole family?
We've had a lot of family time lately, so I'm going to say one-on-one time.
Hey, that's a perfectly fine answer.
Yeah.
I love my one-on-one time too. Before I let you go, Mike, I always ask my guests this one last question. Mm-hmm. If we talk to your kids in 20 years and we say, tell us about your dad, what would you hope that they would say?
Oh, man, it's a good question, because I've been thinking about this a lot lately. One of the things I've personally struggled with is so much of my sense of self has been tied to what I do, and I think it's pretty common, especially if you work with cool people or you do something really interesting or you work in one of these industries that emphasizes these, all the cool stuff. And ultimately, I want to just be known as just a great guy, as an awesome guy. And so I want my kids to not say like, oh, my dad did all this cool stuff, or like, oh, he worked, with so-and-so, or oh, our friends are this and that. But it's like, my dad was like amazing. Like, we built model rockets. He took me to Paris. We, would just go for walks on the beach. We'd eat the best, croissants, and find like the cool things at the Space Museum. Like, I want them to remember me for and appreciate me for the things that I enriched their life with.
Very cool, Mike. One of the reasons why I asked that question is Rise and Dad podcast is about intentionality. And now that you said that, then you kind of like voiced it in the world of like, this is what you want to be and what you want to be seen as. So it's almost like a reminder of like,
and hugs.
Oh yeah, I have
hugs.
to do it. Yeah, he gives the greatest hugs.
Lots of hugs and his back scratches.
Yeah.
And,
you do give good hugs. You do give good hugs. Awesome. Well, hey, Mike, thanks for joining the podcast. We had a really good time. I think we learned so much from a perspective we haven't heard before on the podcast. So thanks a lot for joining.
Pleasure. Awesome.
Cool.
Awesome.
Thanks a lot, Mike.
Thank you.
What's up, guys? It's Kevin from the Rise and Dad podcast. Thanks so much for watching this episode. We hope that you like, comment, share, subscribe, follow, rate, do all the great things that'll help us keep making content for you. Thanks a lot.